Hello, everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG architecture meeting for August 13th, 2020. We have a good crowd here, so please just want to remind everybody to follow our code of conduct, treat each other with respect, and assumption of good intent. I think with that, we'll get started. We have just a couple things on the agenda today. First is the discussion about the Kube Addon Manager. I can give some context on this, or Dims if you want to discuss it, or Jake, I see you're on the line as well, so happy to let one of you take it.
Yeah, Jake probably has the best view of this.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, there we go. So the impetus for this is that, we want to be able to get the add-on manager, off of sort of a fat OS image, so that basically just means, having to re-implement it in something that doesn't require bash. Additionally, we just, figured while I'm in there, might as well start testing it.
Novel.
That's pretty much it.
The part of the problem here is cluster is not maintained, right? In the sense that there is no SIG that owns the cluster itself, a directory, and then all the subdirectories under it. And it's like a sprinkling of people from here and there, banding together to keep it alive. So that's part of the issue here. So the other thing that comes to mind is, if we turn some of this into the Go-based binaries, then the questions that come around are like, do we need to build them? Do we need to publish container images? Do we need to, add it to the release? There's like a whole slew of maintenance stuff that comes in. So if it's just scripts, it's easy, nobody cares, right? But then once you turn it into a binary, then we have to talk about the rest of the things that come associated with it. Well, some of the questions were around, does it need to live here? Is there a better home for it? Is it that kind of questions?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one is we already built an image, I believe, for this, and it's not part of the release, but it's built and pushed something like what do we do with EDE images. So that wouldn't change particularly. But we, I chatted with Jake earlier, and I mean, it doesn't seem like there's an issue with moving this somewhere else if we know where to move it. Justin had some ideas on this since he's involved in SIG cluster lifecycle. I don't know, Justin, you wanted to comment on that?
Sure. There is a potentially overlapping, at least thematically, a subproject of SIG cluster lifecycle called the Cluster Addon Subproject. It is, relatively early in its maturity lifecycle. I don't think we haven't done like even an alpha type release yet. However, we do have the repo structure set up. We have, a bunch of build type mechanics there. And I think, and we don't have I would call this a bootstrapping tool. So the cluster add-ons is more or less pursuing the idea of operators as the way of installing things, but we don't have a way to actually install the operators themselves. And the Kube Addon Manager, former script, now Go binary, could be seen as that. And so from that point of view, I think cluster add-ons could be a great place for it. I am one of the approvers, so I would certainly be in favor of it going there. I can't speak for everyone, but I can't imagine anyone objecting so it seems like that would meet, it seems like that's an option.
Anything that removes code from KK, you can't be right there.
We can also put it in Dims's repo.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Like if cluster add-ons wants to sort of take ownership of this, quote unquote, And if this provides a useful bootstrap mechanism, then win-win-win.
Right, and I'm like willing to help with anything on the Kate's working group infra side to set you up with whatever G Cloud stuff, GCP builds, Pro stuff. All that comes for free. I just don't want to do it in KK. That was my only limitation there.
Yeah, totally cool.
So the other question I had for you, Jake, was other than the QBub scripts, is anybody using this in the field? Do you know of any end users that pick up the script that we need to notify or?
Not
do we
well.
need to notify them? Sorry, Jake.
I can speak to that.
So the answer is indirectly. I mean, it is consumed. The answer is maybe. It's definitely GKE. It's definitely the cube up script for the open source tests. In terms of like actual customers using it,
probably not directly then, right?
Yeah.
So the only other thing that I could think of was the QBub scripts were being duplicated inside one other repository. So that was the only other thing that I could think of. But this, Justin's, the repo that Justin pointed out feels way better, in terms of being aligned with the work that is getting started. So I think that's a better.
Sounds good. Sure.
This is easy.
Easy question.
Where'd you use it, Tim? I know that there's like a whole bunch of configuration mismatches.
Yeah,
like in terms of
I don't remember exactly. I don't know which configuration broke, but I was trying with a bunch of different configurations just to see how the different parameters worked or didn't work with it. And I think it was like VPC native plus network policy. Like I had turned on a bunch of different parameters, and my cluster came up and none of the nodes are schedulable because it's complaining that the routes haven't been programmed, but it's supposed to be on VPC native mode. And I didn't really dig into it, but I just wanted to say, like, yeah, I tried it. It was broken.
I would totally believe it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of like random edge cases, especially with the way it configures kubectl to actually like do these, to do the applies. I can see it just missing things.
Well, the only other thing that I can think of is what will go out and what will remain. Like some of the manifests will remain here, right? Because they need to be tracked per Kubernetes version.
Yeah, I mean, like basically until a replacement is implemented, I mean, it is consumed as an image in in the tests in GKE. It's not used. The existing script is not used directly anywhere, as far as I can tell.
Okay, and the last question from me is you don't foresee any specificity around the older releases that we have currently, 16, 17, 18. The same version will work for all three that of?
It should. Like I intentionally implemented it just like as directly as possible, just a direct translation, so that if it worked before, hopefully it'll continue working. If it doesn't, then that's probably like a good indicator that I screwed something up, kind of thing, rather than like us introducing. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Typically, we don't go around deleting the scripts from the older releases, but this was just in case question.
Oh yeah, I mean the older releases aren't going to be changed at all because the image, the Addon Manager image that they're using is just baked into one of the manifests.
Okay. Thank you, Jake, for doing that.
Okay, I guess that's resolved.
Before we move on, what are next steps to start moving it out, Dims?
So the PR Jake has, maybe we can just create a fresh PR against the repository, that Justin pointed out, and merge that in, and then do all the things that we need to do in Pro to build the image and push it. We have a lot of other images that we can copy stuff from to do that.
Sure.
And once we use a image promoter, we can use the image promoter and promote it to the prod repository. And once it is there, we can go clean up the existing KK master to use the image and remove the script.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, great then. Why don't we move on to the sub-project readouts? Actually, one thing they usually have on the agenda that I forgot is sort of follow-ups from last time, and I think Wojciech had, from last time, he talked about reliability and a discussion on reliability, and I think he's got something he's written up, so I think he just wanted to ask people to review it. Wojciech, could you pop that in the agenda so people have a link to it? And then just
Sure.
quick.
Let me put that now, yeah. Yeah, so basically, to sum up, like I wrote the proposal for creating reliability working group. I also pasted the link in the email thread discussion sometimes. So there are already a couple discussions there. Some of them we already resolved. Some of them are still open, but like I would appreciate any other feedback. I would like to propose that more officially in the next week or two, and actually start doing some real work there.
So just on this topic, Jorge Alarcon has been developing the CI signal subproject plan. And
Can you speak up, Laura? You're really quiet.
Sure. So Jorge, who I think is actually here, has been developing the CI signal subproject plan, and there's a perception of overlap between these two efforts. So I just want to point that out, that there's RFC that Jorge has developed around the subproject idea, which would be, he can weigh in on if he'd like, but essentially federated CI signal in different SIGs to help manage that aspect of work. And it gets at a lot of the reliability goals that are in Wojciech's email.
Yeah, I think there is some overlap. I think that the reliability is much wider. But yeah, we should probably discuss that. I'm not sure if we want to do that now or offline or
We were hoping to make it go live this week, but with the issues with the releases, it was not possible.
Yeah, I think my goal isn't really for reliability SIG to own like how we track like SIG tests, individual SIG test healthiness and stuff like that, but rather give us, whoever the us will be here, the powers to actually somewhat enforce that as part of the SIG. So I still can easily imagine that it will be fully driven by the CI signal subproject, and we will just like kind of delegate it fully to the CI signal. But yeah, we can probably discuss that on the doc too.
Okay, well, thank you. I put the link in the agenda, so yeah, please, people, go take a look at that, and we can progress on the document on that. It looks like somebody just added the shipping alternate architectures. Yeah, so I guess Dims, you wrote that up a while back based on our FF2 news last time or the time before. So are you just asking for more review there?
Yeah, absolutely. I need I need you and Derek to look, John, but I definitely need other people, especially who have been through this process or who will go through this process, to take a look to see what we are in for, what we are looking at in terms of like the life cycle of the whole thing, and where we are looking for information, where we are looking for help. how to get integrated into the community. So how to get integrated into the testing and release SIGs, so there's a bunch of information there. So I definitely need people from MIPS and somebody else. I think Illumos was the other one, but that's not really an architecture. That was an OS. So whoever needs to integrate and get things in should please take a look at it. Tina, please ask your folks to take a look at it.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, then we are on to the sub-project readouts. Hippie, are you here for the conformance readout?
Hippie is unfortunately not in, but I could speak to that if you want to, John.
Absolutely, please do.
Thank you. Thoughts on conformance. We had a very robust meeting in this week in the office hours meeting, and it's really taking shape around the profiles. And one of the thoughts is to make it go live without being a block, but more of a data collection of information to see where we're going in the next releases to get it going. I think I summarized this, probably somebody on the call that can summarize it better than I do. So that is for that. And then on API Snoop, on conformance coverage, if you go to the API Snoop page, you're not sharing your screen, are you? No. Just get my document back up. For API Snoop, we did very well for this quarter. There was endpoints added by the community with conformance test 41 endpoints, old endpoints that got conformance. There was 38 added, which took us over 50%. We have 177 endpoints that do not have conformance tests, but we have 229 at the end of 190. So it was really a very good effort from both killing all endpoints and bringing all endpoints that came in on 119 actually came in with tests. So it's really a very good performance by everybody. And then on the conformance gate, for checking, automatic checking and labeling of conformance requests, we've got a, thanks for that, John. If you slide it up to the top, yeah, there you'll see basically the dark green you see in 119, that is the endpoints that was carried over from 118 that was conformant. Just above that, the darker green, that is 38 endpoints. That is all endpoints that is technical debt that received their test in this release. And then the 41 at the top is all community endpoints from Liggett and from Project team that brought in a lot of endpoints with new endpoints from beta to GA. Then if we go to the graph just below, we have now a new graph that showed technical debt, which is basically on the left-hand side, the orange that you see is all endpoints that came in without tests. And as you see from 115, we've really been good as a community to not bring in anything without it, but only 3 endpoints that sneaked in over the last couple of releases without tests. So slowly we're busy knocking down technical debt, working backwards as good as we can. So I think we're doing it very well as a community on that. Then just find the agenda again. Okay, the next thing, okay, the conformance gate. We're doing very well on the conformance gate. We've got an instance running on a fork of the CNCF release. You'll see there's a CNCF infra, and we can actually run PRs against it. And it actually, there's just a layout of the process flow, and it actually successfully gives you feedback on conformance of your PR. So as soon as we get approval from CNCF, that will go live on the actual CNCF side. All PRs will be automatically labeled conformant, and it actually warns you if there's things missing. Then the next step would be the Kubernetes gate that we're going to kick off in Q3. which we have a roadmap for. Some of the important things for that is we basically got the trigger explaining how it works. So basically every PR that comes in that touch conformance, it will give you some feedback. There's a description of the actions, basically taking you through all the different options. If you're going from alpha to beta or into alpha, it will warn you that you do need conformance test to go to GA, but by the time you get to GA, it will actually block you. You'll not be able to merge unless you have conformance test. The idea is, and we would like to get some community feedback on that, when you get the error message that you cannot move forward without conformance test, we will have an API Snoop landing page. The landing page would actually not be the thought we have is not be the actual API Snoop page, but it would be a page with several documents explaining basically conformance testing, the requirements that you must have test for go to GA, the documentation for conformance, test writing, all those type of information. And then it will actually have some hyperlinks to API Snoop itself. And then it will show some explanation about the access to different areas, what the Sunburst does, list of endpoints that's per release, and basically giving the community a good overview. There is not a general knowledge in all SIGs about API Snoop. So the idea here is to really market the tool that we have available to help everybody. And that is it. I don't know if there's any questions on those topics.
All right, well, thank you, Rian. Any questions, or shall we move on to the enhancements subproject? I will take that as time to move on. All right, Lori, you're up.
Hi, so I added some notes to the agenda so the note taker can take a little break. But basically just the major points I wanted to cover with you. So there are basically two main topics, or 1 and 1A. The first is just an update on some prioritization efforts that we've had underway in SIG release and the 119 release team around prioritizing existing backlog items. So what I did to facilitate that was collect a lot of existing items from GitHub, and then also some enhancements related documentation links, and then shove them into a spreadsheet, and then had about 2/3 of the release team members actually join small breakout sessions where they prioritize the items. And we focused on must items and should items. So those sessions happened in June and were across the whole release team. So all the sub teams, representatives from all of those joined. And so we had a lot of this healthy discussion in these 1-hour sessions and ran through everything and got some sense of what the group thought should be worked on most immediately, and what was holding them up as release team members from actually managing the cycle as easily as they could. And then in July, I did two sessions with roughly the same items in a spreadsheet with Jorge, Stephen Augustus, Tim Pepper, and Sasha. And they also gave their ideas around what is high priority, medium, and low. And so this week I actually took the notes from the sessions with the 4 SIG release leads and the previous set of notes from the release team members and combined them into the single spreadsheet, which is in the agenda. It's the Prioritization Efforts link. So if you click on that, you will see a tab. And this is maybe a little bit frightening because it's rather large, but the idea is to actually get rid of this spreadsheet. It was just basically a dumping ground and a sandbox for us to have discussions around what is highest value, highest priority work. And so from these sessions, you'll note that there's in column N, what I did to create these totals was that every person here, Stephen, Tim, Jorge, and Sasha had a vote. So 1 would be least important and 4 would be most important. And then I took the release team members and weighted their musts as 4s and their shoulds as 3s. So anybody who had spoken up during those sessions and said, we must do this, I would add 4. And then if they we should do this, it should be 3. And then if they just noted anything at all, but weren't really specific, that would be a 1. And so these are not, scientific, and this kind of prioritization strategy has a lot of flaws. But I just want to bring it to attention, like this isn't a perfect system yet. But what it does do is it actually gives us some ideas about what people think is most important. So I noted 4 items in the agenda on this, and these will be familiar to you, I'm sure. But basically, enhancing the KEPS implementation and the related tooling. So KEPCUDDLE, or however we're pronouncing that, was of high interest, and you will find in the spreadsheet lots of context and comments about how people in the release team felt about that tool. And then the second one is make KEPS transparent. So again, this has a lot of comments that were generated during those breakouts. They're all dumped in that spreadsheet. Just as a side note to this transparency topic, there are actually 3 product managers that jumped into the enhancements channel in June or so and took a look at the existing process and did a review. And I don't know if you talked about that at the last enhancements meeting, because I wasn't there for that, but it was in July 7th. And the link here is the notes from their findings. So I have a question here, if we could perhaps review their work at the next meeting next week.
Well, yeah, let's definitely review it there.
Okay.
And then double it up here.
Cool. Cool. And then 2 other items I just want to call out because they were heavily weighted in these prioritization sessions is tracking enhancement slip across multiple releases. And then finally, just drilling down further into the criterion process for alpha, beta, GA. And so a lot of these items seem to have been parked for a while. I mean, there's a lot going on, so it's completely understandable. But this means that we might have to review and update some of the items because there has been work done on some of them. So, and also maybe scope has changed. And also we have found out new information during 119 that would cause us to adjust the original goals. And that gets into the topic of the project board, which I'm wondering if there's a way to set up any sort of regular process like walking the board to just track how we make progress on the priorities. And I want to call out one thing that would actually help us would be to, if we have some of these big items, breaking them down into smaller bits of value, which it would be great if these product managers that want to help out would actually help us do that using their expertise, and also thinking about what contributors might be able to help with, and then also applying triage principles to this incoming work, because we'll always have new things to talk about. As far as I know, there hasn't been any major activity on anything in the sub-project board, but please tell me if I'm wrong. I just might have missed
Yeah,
something.
no, I think there hasn't been, but like, let's, okay, this is great. So we're getting a lot more organized in the enhancement sub-project. Thank you, Laurie, for all of this. Super helpful.
Sure.
You know, you can see we have a lot to do. So anybody who's on this call and wants to join us next week for our enhancement sub-project call and help, you know, some of the concrete things are, as you have in here, like this KEP control, KEPCUDDLE, whatever you want to call it, is a CLI tool to sort of discover KEPs and also to create new KEPs that sort of have the right metadata set up and promote them from, you know, when you're doing a promotion from alpha to beta, it'll be a tool that does that, and it can sort of validate that you've met certain gates and things like that. So if you're interested in helping out with that, we definitely can use the help. It's the enhancement sub-project is new, and so we just have a few people involved, and could really could use more eyes on it and more fingers on keyboard as well. So awesome, thank you. Any questions about this stuff?
I put as a note, like, it would be great to have subject matter experts to help review some of this text. Like, again, I'm going to say break things off like the big spreadsheet into smaller manageable bits. So if you look in that spreadsheet, you'll see things like column A, which has lots of colors, or like the main themes. So whether it's enhancements tracking or the alpha beta GA process or the templates, anything like pulling one of those items.
I have to say, I don't know that there are subject matter experts in this, because this is, I mean, this is like people doing Kubernetes development. So we're all in some sense subject matter experts, but it's not like, you know, a subject matter expert in storage or something. I think you're probably the subject matter expert for us here in program management. So definitely helpful. But yes, please, anybody who has opinions and ideas, join in.
It's a quick question, John, for you and Tim. Thanks, Laurie. So we had, I guess you were doing a book club of KEPs.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still on, or did it get folded
So,
into this one?
What we did, and Tim, you could jump in if you disagree, but what happens, we met a few times, and we found that it was extremely difficult to discover KEPs that needed attention. So, you know, some of the goals of that were like, let's find KEPs that maybe are really interesting, good features, but are stuck because of whatever reasons. Or sometimes there were KEPs that it's like, you know, this sounds interesting, but there's actually this subtle thing that's going to cause, you know, a lot of performance degradation. Like so we're trying to help triage, but not just triage sort of typical incoming KEPs, but the things that were getting caught in the cracks. But it was so hard to discover things that I think we just kind of stalled. And so one of the things we're trying to do is with the tooling here is to improve the discoverability. That for me is a big thing. I don't know if Tim has anything to add to that.
Yeah, we also, I mean, we did some work to make the KEPs better, right? We broke them into directories and we broke the metadata out into a more machine parsable format, ostensibly so that we could have better tooling. We got the sort of unresolved annotation clarified, which I think are all net good things. I don't know how much people are using them. I use them, but those were helpful in figuring out like what has and hasn't been resolved. The meeting sort of stalled out right around the time everybody went into quarantine, and we haven't really reinstated it since then. Unfortunately, I mean, I really actually enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, actually, speaking of the unresolved, so there's a PR out there for the query function in the KEP control, and I didn't add looking for things with unresolved, but that's actually would be really useful, I think, to examine the KEPs and say, oh, this one's got unresolved segments, because one of the hard things about KEPs is we want to merge them quickly, but then you lose the ability to comment on them.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm asking because me and Andrew are probably interested in, you know, getting into this cycle of reviewing as well. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and I think it's not the goal of the enhancement subproject. The enhancement subproject is more around process and tooling, but we could also have a separate group that then, you know, can actually, I think that would still be great to start that up again.
Yeah, I'd love to put that back together. I thought it was super useful for being exposed to KEPs that I might not otherwise have clicked on, and for getting different people's perspectives on it. And in fact, through those discussions, I had my mind changed on quite a number of things. So it was a useful process.
Okay, looking forward to an updated calendar invite, John. Thank you.
Okay.
So I know this meeting sometimes ends early. Could we like just use like extra time in this meeting to just go over whatever KEPs folks want to get reviewed here?
So the problem with that, I mean, it sounds good. The problem with it is you have to do homework. You can't read the KEP in real time. You have to have like called it out a few days before, made time for yourself to go through and read it. Some of these KEPs were, you know, 8-10 pages long for the complicated ones. You have to think about it, and then you can come and have a reasonable discussion about it. It's, you know, like if we wanted to invite people to come and present their KEPs here, like that would be an interesting like opening shot, but I don't think we can have the same level of discussion about them that we could have if we've done homework.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Not that we want another meeting, Andrew. But it's an interesting meeting. So.
I'm willing to give up an hour every week or every other week for this because I think it is important and useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, why don't we plan on getting that started up again soon then, especially once we have a little more progress on this tooling. I think that'll be helpful. And Tim, I don't know if you've looked at that. And Lori's got some links in for requirements around that, but if you've got ideas around criteria to use for discovery, at some point you got to read them and just decide whether they're interesting. But if there's any filtering we can do, I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I think I included the. There's a, oh no, I don't see it. There's a link, I'll drop it in. There was a list of notes that Jeremy and Bob had created around, it was called the Cuddle Notes. And then I drafted a bunch of user stories for it. So right now the doc is really long because it's it needs review and it needs to be cut down. So like, how would we want Cuddle to work and for which users and what is most important to do first.
Maybe we should review that in the next enhancement.
Yeah, that would be great. So that'd be awesome.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap it up here? Okay. Thank
Does
you.
anybody have a kept they want to talk about, Andrew?
No, not this week. You got me.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot, man.
Okay. In that case, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.